Angels Care Home Health, serving Hayes and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
They're polite. I mean, they just take the time for you.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
I like the Angels for what they've done for me.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.
Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching. Thanks as always to the producer of our series, Jeff Durall. We're at Lincoln Elementary School in Hayes in the Lincoln School cafeteria with Mike Morley, Communications Director for Midwest Energy. But today we're visiting with Mike as the head of the Speakers Bureau coordinator for USD 489 school bond issue. And I guess obviously, Mike, first question is, why did you get involved in this?
Well, it certainly isn't to make a lot of friends in Hayes, that's for sure. The reason I got involved, Mike, is I have 4 kids this year in 489 schools. When we came to Hayes, it was the schools that really set the community apart from the others that we were looking at moving to. And I view it almost as a sense of obligation. Somehow I've got to give back to the schools that are giving so much to my kids.
This bond issue coming up for a vote June 7th. What do we need to know about it, Mike?
I think there's 4 things that come to front of mind. First is that our schools are woefully inadequate in terms of safety, security, and accessibility. And the 4th item would be deferred maintenance. I'll start with that. We've got a deferred maintenance backlog currently today of almost $20 million. And that's work that needs attention, electrical work, plumbing work, HVAC, et cetera, that's needed attention for a long time, but the funding just hasn't been there to get that work accomplished. So that's critical. Accessibility. All of our schools were built before the signing of the ADA, with the exception of Hayes High School. The Americans with Disabilities Act said all government buildings and schools would be compliant and handicap accessible by 1986. 30 years later, we're still not there. And that's a glaring deficiency, and it's frankly just not the right thing to do for students that have mobility issues. In terms of safety, none of our schools have engineered storm shelters, with the exception of Hayes Middle School, and that's a relatively recent development. I think in the last 3 or 4 years, some government money became available and that was constructed. But as far as the elementary schools in particular, Wilson, O'Laughlin, et cetera, what they do is they go out into the hallway, put their heads against the wall, and duck and cover right underneath skylights. Any kind of tornado that would hit a building when children are in that would be absolutely devastating. And we've seen that happen in other communities like Moore, Oklahoma. They used the exact same technique back in 2013 when a tornado hit one of their schools and it killed 7 of their second graders and put another 70 in the hospital. So that's something that we can prevent with this bond. And the 4th one, but I think probably the most important and the most likely, is the security. And none of the Hayes schools today have any kind of physical security barriers to keep out somebody who would come into the school and harm our students. Be that a sex offender, be that a non-custodial parent coming in to snatch a child, or in the worst case, a shooter that would come into a school for whatever reason and try to kill staff and students. We have no physical barriers to prevent that today. This bond would put in place a series of locked doors that people would have to show identification to the office so they could be screened against offender registries, and then would have to be physically buzzed in by somebody in the office. Today, you can walk into any school with as much ammunition and as many guns as you can physically carry, and there is absolutely nothing to stop you. In fact, most of the offices can't even see you. These buildings were built in a time where that just didn't happen. And today, unfortunately, it's a lot more commonplace than we'd like to acknowledge. At Heston, Kansas, just last month, prime example.
When you outline this, the question that most of us who strongly support this bond issue is, why in the world has it taken so long to make these moves?
That's a very good question, and I don't think it was necessarily negligence. I think there's always been other things happening that have prevented leadership, whatever leadership was in place between the board and the superintendent, from focusing on this. It's an issue that everybody's known about, was growing and growing and growing, and it really came to a head, I think, in about 2012 with the Facilities Needs Committee, and that's the group that came up with this list of projects, this $94 million list. And that was a group of 14 community volunteers, parents involved with the site councils, business leaders from the community, et cetera. And they went through and they looked at every school. They looked at the roofs, they looked at the boilers, they looked at everything in the schools, and came up with this list of deferred maintenance items and accessibility items. But at the same time, 2012, when they were doing this survey, Sandy Hook happened in Newtown, Connecticut, and then shortly after that, the Moore, Oklahoma tornado. That really shifted their focus to look and say, what if these events were to hit our schools? Completely unprepared. And they deemed that unacceptable, and that's why they came up with this list of 94 million.
And part of that, 3 ballot questions that will be on the June 7th ballot for people's approval, includes a half-cent sales tax, the March 24th approval by the City Commission to put that on the ballot. How would that figure in? Why is the sales tax, that half-cent, important, Mike?
Well, I think it's important for 2 reasons. Number one, we're a relatively small community. We're 20,000 people, 22,000 people. And to put a $94 million burden on the property owners in a city that size is very, very tall. So what the board was looking to do was offer some type of relief to those property taxpayers. Paying for infrastructure and school bonds with sales tax is kind of new for Hayes. I don't think it's been done before, but it's not new for other Kansas communities. You go to Independence, Kansas, they have a sales tax that pays down their bond. You go to Wichita, in some areas around Wichita, same thing. You stay in a hotel in Wichita, part of your hotel bill goes to pay off the Intrust Arena. So using sales tax and lodging tax to pay for infrastructure is really nothing new. And what this seeks to do is kind of leverage our position along I-70 to help have our guests pay for some of this infrastructure that frankly we would have a very hard time paying for ourselves.
And otherwise, the entire burden would be on a property tax then.
Exactly correct.
On the town hall meetings, you've had many town hall meetings. There are more coming up. May 3rd meeting at Hayes Middle School, 6 p.m. May 11th at Roosevelt at 6:30, and then the final one for May 18th at O'Laughlin at 6 p.m. What are you hearing from those town hall meetings, Mike?
What's interesting is, well, the audiences have ranged in size from 70 all the way down to 1. In fact, we had one where we actually canceled because nobody came. But I think that's fine. I think the worst thing we could do is to do this bond without giving people an opportunity to come and ask questions and voice their opinion before voting. So we're going to continue to do these right up until early voting starts on May 19th. What we've heard so far is that people generally are supportive, and some of the comments from parents that really stick with me, boy, I wish all parents would come and hear this because I learned a lot tonight. When you hear things like that, it really validates what you're doing and gives you a little extra support to continue.
What about the person who doesn't have a stake, if you will, skin in the game, as they like to say? No kids in school, long gone. I'm basically individual who's on retirement, that type thing.
Sure.
Why should I invest?
Well, I think everybody, if you live in the city of Hayes or within 489, has skin in the game, frankly. Because number one, these are our kids, okay? And if they're not your children, it's your neighbor's children or your coworkers' children. We're a community, and just because they're biologically not your kids doesn't absolve us from responsibility for them. The second thing is schools are the number one thing that Hayes business owners report when they're trying to recruit people from out of town. Schools are the number one thing that those potential employees are looking at. If you don't have competitive schools, if your facilities are substandard, if your teachers and your test scores are substandard, employees are going to go elsewhere. my experience is a prime example of that. We came here not because the facilities were great, they weren't. We were looking at Mays schools by comparison. But the staff, the administrators were fantastic. And when a principal of Hayes High School is going to take an hour to walk you through and introduce you to 15 teachers, that says something. There's a lot of pride there, and that's why we made our decision to come. So I think everybody really has skin in the game. If you own a business, if you have friends or grandchildren or whatnot that are in the district, or coworkers, everybody's got a role to play in this.
Well, and Mike, I see it as kind of a legacy thing too. We were handed a great group of facilities in 489. We were handed quite a legacy. Time for us to pass that along to others that'll come after us. Absolutely.
Just before taping, we were out in the lobby looking at the picture of Lincoln Elementary School, class of 1927. And in that, you see a lot of big names from Hayes. You see Henry Schwaller the first. You saw Ross Beach in that photo. So it really goes to show that this isn't just something that you put your kids through 12 years and then you wash your hands of it. This is cross-generational. This is a multi-generational investment that we're looking to do. And that's what this bond does, is it fixes these immediate issues that we have, but it also addresses the space issues that we project we're going to have for the next 40 years as Hayes grows. This keeps our existing schools open, keeps them viable for 3 to 4 decades.
Two things that people, I think, need to be aware of. How, and I know you've toured, you've seen other facilities. How do we compare with other schools of similar size?
Not very good, unfortunately. When you go to, and it's not just the parents, it's when the students, our high school and middle school kids go to Garden City or they go to Dodge, and they look at the facilities that exist in communities very similar to Hayes. It's astonishing that we haven't done any construction in our district in terms of building a new facility. We haven't done that since 1977. Jimmy Carter was president in 1977.
Wow.
Most of these kids' parents weren't born when our last school was built. Garden City, Dodge, and again others have put a lot of investment in plant. They've got modern, safe facilities that are turning out great students with good test results. Hayes, we don't have the facilities. We've been able to keep up with the test results. But how much longer can that happen? How long can you ask staff to work in facilities that are degraded? How much can you ask of these people before they say, maybe I'll try my fortunes in Wichita or in Mays? So I think it's a competitiveness issue, frankly, more than anything that we need to consider.
And if people think, well, we can put this off. You gave a great example of Dodge City and how they structured their facility and the difference in the facility at Dodge. Tell me about that.
Sure. Dodge City High School, beautiful, beautiful school. It's got 2 huge academic wings, a lot of commons areas, and some great athletic facilities. That was built in 2001 at a cost of about $35 million. Dodge City has since grown to the point where they need to add a 3rd academic wing that's identical to the first 2. They got their bids, they're putting their bond together, $34 million. So it just goes to show in 15 years how costs have escalated. They built the whole school for 35, and now they're going to have to turn around and just add 1 wing for $34 million. And that speaks to this bond. Every year that we delay, just the deferred maintenance tab will grow between $500,000 and $600,000 a year, every year. Cost of construction are going up at a rate of about 6% a year. And when you look at the population projections for Hayes, you talk to a gentleman at one of the town hall meetings that came to Hayes in the 1950s. And he said back then, the town basically started at St. Joseph's Cemetery on Vine. And as you went south, it became more densely populated. Look at it today. I-70's come through. We're going well north of I-70 now. Housing developments are sprawling out to the northwest and to the east. There was a population study done by Wichita State back in March, I believe, that said Hayes by the year 2050 would have 40,000 residents. That's almost double even if that's half wrong, we are going to have serious growth in our schools in the next 35 years. And the buildings that we have today can't take that. This bond expands, particularly in the elementary schools, and adds additional classroom space for mainstream students, for special education students that we desperately need, and again, keeps those schools viable and productive for about 4 decades.
And one final question, if we could, Mike, on the question on number 2. There are 3 ballot questions. Approval of $8,900,000 for new gyms at Hayes High and Hayes Middle School.
Sure.
Why the need?
The need, particularly at Hayes Middle School, is acute. They have one large gym at Hayes Middle School, and that gym is divided throughout the day for boys and girls PE classes, particularly in the winter months. They'll draw a curtain across the middle, which really limits what you can do. You can't do volleyball, you can't do basketball, you can't do soccer, things like that. There's also scheduling conflicts with various practices to where ideally you would have all your practices after school, but in the winter, when you've got multiple sports going at the same time, you can't do that. So you might have one sport starting at 6 a.m. and the other going after school. It's kind of crazy. At Hayes High School, it's much the same thing. When Hayes High School was built in '77, it was what was then a competition gym. That definition has changed over the years, and frankly, there's space limitations as well. If you've ever gone to a Hayes High School awards ceremony or a concert, I usually end up standing out in the hall because I get there 2 minutes before it starts, and all the bleachers are full.
Yeah.
So there's a true need for those. In addition to that, these aren't just for 489 kids. These are facilities that are community assets, which means they can be used by TMP kids. They can be used by Holy Family kids. They can be used by outside groups like Special Olympics or the state wrestling tournaments or the basketball tournaments. There's a host of reasons why these gyms are needed, and it doesn't just stop with the school kids that attend at these schools.
There is a terrific handout that was put out for those that signed the signature on the petition recently, 1,629. That is this available for people who would like to have a printed piece of information, Mike?
It is. Actually, these are available at the town hall meetings, and in addition to that, we'll be mailing out some of its district materials that the district can mail out, and some of it is materials coming from the 489 committee. We've been very careful to make a distinction between what the district can do and what the committee can do. The district can mail out informational materials, and they can fund those with district monies, but it can't be anything that advocates a particular position. It can't say vote yes or vote no. The committee is differently. We can send out mailers that say vote yes, but we raised funds to do that through our fundraising committee. There's been several businesses in town and several individuals that have contributed to this and given us enough money to where we can do mailers and some radio spots and things like that. So you'll be seeing more of those coming up through the month of May as we get closer to the vote.
Well, those of us as part of the community certainly want to say thanks to you, Mike Morley, to those facilities needs committee members who spent hours and hours touring the facilities, finding the needs, and also to the committee members who do everything from the mailers to all of the other operations that put the information out to voters.
Excellent. Well, it's again our pleasure to do this, and like Dean Catt has said at several of the meetings, this is really something that we're doing for the kids and for the community.
And for our future as a community.
And for the future, absolutely.
Mike Morley, Speakers Bureau Coordinator for USD 489 and Communications Director, Midwest Energy, our community connection.
Angels Care Home Health, serving Hayes and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
And the Angel Care nurse comes to see me once a week.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
Angel Care has helped to stay home.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.